Hello, welcome to Wolf United WFC.
Hello and welcome to All for United WFC, not John Foster, MUFC. You've got me for tonight. John is currently stuck on the M6 somewhere, so you've been dealt with the sixth choice host tonight. Joining me, I've got Stu and I've got Phil.
Hi guys.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah, all good. I think I had the third go with the turkey today, so I'm kind of pretty much done now. You know, like tomorrow's going to have to be the gym. I managed not to go training today or anything else like that, but it's been a magnificent Christmas. I live in Stockholm, Sweden. So on Christmas Eve, we had the usual, pickled herring, that's standard Scandinavian, that kind of stuff. And then the turkey on Christmas Day, and the same thing yesterday, and the same thing today. I'm kind of done now. So fresh air and training tomorrow, How about you, Stu?
Yeah, good. Well, again, I've put the turkey away for today, but I've been to the gym this morning. Done a bit of boxing, done some circuit training. So gym tomorrow, and then family time for the rest of the week. Really, I might pick up the laptop and do some work. But looking forward to tonight's men's match. Shouldn't say that on the women's channel, but at least we're back. Looking forward to a bit of football. But yeah, all in all, I had a great Christmas. Looking forward to New Year now, guys. I have to say.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, I hope everyone in the comments and everyone who is watching this on repeat or wherever you're watching this has had a good Christmas break and obviously into the new year as well. Where in England, no new restrictions, which is good for the time being, but we won't get into that because that could take up the whole show. So obviously, Stu and Phil, all of us actually have come across from All for United men's side, but Phil in particular, do you just want to give us a background on kind of how your involvement in women's football and kind of how you've been involved in kind of the Norwegian squad in particular?
Yeah, well, this whole idea for this show came about. I was chatting to Stu the other night there, and I was saying how interested I am in women's football. So for me, it started really when I moved to Sweden, Connor, because when I grew up in Ireland, women didn't play sport. There was very few women played sport. It was kind of like they were invisible to us the whole time. Now, obviously, they played sport, but they were never seen in the media. They never got to do anything. We only really had Sonia O'Sullivan at that point. But when you move to Sweden, which is a much more sort of equality-based society, all of a sudden you started to see players and you start to see results coming in. You went, hang on a second, they have a women's league here as well. And of course, the best players in Scandinavia, from Finland, from Denmark, from Iceland, they played in the Norwegian and the Swedish league. So the Swedish league was here and the Norwegian league was just under it. But then you start to learn the history of it. You go to the games, you see the national teams, you go to the games, that kind of thing. And I was actually doing the European Championships in 2012 for a major news agency. I was over in the Ukraine there covering the Swedish national team. And the following year then, there was the Euros were being held here in Sweden. And I thought, okay, hang on a second. We spent millions last year covering the Swedish men's team. What are we doing this year? So I went to the agency and they said, well, we don't really have the budget and people aren't really interested in women's football. I went, I'll tell you what, I'll put the kids in the car and I'll drive to the Swedish Midlands. I'll go to the games in the evening. We'll have a little camping holiday with the family. I'll go to and that was when I started covering women's football properly. Previous to that was only really an interest. I didn't write about it for a living, so to speak. So, and of course, Norway wound up against Germany in that final. I think the Norwegians missed 2 penalties in that final at the Friends Arena just down the road from me here. And that was when I first saw them play, and saw how good these girls actually were. Caroline Grom Hansen, who now plays at Barcelona, was in that final despite being a teenager. So I've always wanted to go to those major tournaments, and I didn't get the chance to go to World Cup in Canada, which was in 2015. They covered that. The news agency covered that with local staff. So I got a chance with FIFA. FIFA, a friend of mine there, she was going to work with the Swedes, and she said, look, there's nobody to cover the Norwegian team as a digital content producer with them. So the job was traveling with the team, wandering around the place, interviewing them after training, before games, interviewing the coach, Martin Sjögren, who's Swedish, which was really beneficial to me. The problem was it was in Norwegian, and I can read Norwegian, and I can understand what the girls talk to me, but my writing skills are kind of thereabouts. But luckily I had a girl with me and it was brilliant. So I went to the World Cup in France. I met the team just a day or two before the first game against Nigeria, and gradually then over the 3 weeks I got to know the girls, Maria Thorisdottir, Vilde Boe Risa, Caroline Gurreiten and Mara Mjelde, who now play for Chelsea. And really over the last sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I really sort of got into the game. And now it's gotten to the point where for the last few years, I'm sure you've noticed that, the women's game has obviously been covered much more. We have huge clubs like Manchester United, Manchester City, Arsenal always invested, but everybody's on, I hate to use the word bandwagon, but everybody's behind it now. They want the women to succeed. And it's actually very, very important from an equality point of view for big clubs to be involved in this. So that was how I got to know them. And those 3 weeks in France watching these girls work, watching how they progressed through the tournament, how they managed it, seeing what they did on and off the field. The only low point, and there's always a low point for all teams but one who enter a World Cup, at some point they're going to lose. And they lost on my birthday, the 27th of June, to England. And lads, as you can tell by the accent, that was probably the worst birthday I've ever had. But at the very end of it, we were in Paris the next day, we were flying home. And I actually said to Maria, Thorisdottir, I said, I can't believe you could do that to me after all the things we've been through together. I can't believe you could lose to England on my birthday. And she said, well, come to Bay, and we're playing them in September of 2019. Come to Bay and we'll beat them for you. And they did.
I've got a few questions obviously written down, but I just want to ask something off the back of that. What's it like kind of traveling with the squad? Because obviously women's football, like, as you said, is a bit further behind, or a bit, kind of men's football is down the road in terms of, the progression of it. What's it like traveling with the team, like you just said there, and speaking with the girls and this kind of thing? Was there kind of that, like, did the same play? I guess what I'm getting at, do you kind of look at them kind of starstruck? Like, say if you travelled with, let's say, the Portuguese squad in the men's, you got Ronaldo and Fernandes and Shota, so on. Did you have that? Was there ever that moment of, I'm travelling with the team here?
Yeah, I think there always is, because I mean, you're always aware of the privilege that you have to be around people like that. These are among the best women in the world at what they do, and to see what they did, to see the goalkeepers that they had, to see like the strikers like Caroline Graham-Hansen, Gula Reiten, before she signed for Chelsea and then, she moved over there. People didn't know who she was. And you see her now, key part of the Chelsea team that took them all the way to the Champions League final. Maura Mjelde at Chelsea, another fantastic player. Maria Thorisdottir. Maria hasn't played so many games. An incredible footballer. Vilde's an incredible footballer as well, so to be around those people. But the thing about me in journalism is that I always try to treat people and to have conversations the way we're having this conversation here, right? And that's not me bigging myself up. That's I try to treat people like normal people, because if you put them up on a pedestal, they're going to look down on you, right? So I try to represent the fan there. I try to be the person who gets to ask the questions that everybody wants to ask. And it works quite well. We're in a sort of a golden era in the women's game, lads. And I don't think it's going to last too much longer, right? Because they are getting so big. When you see players like Marta, when you see Ode Hegerberg, who doesn't even play with the national team anymore, when you see how big they have become, I do think that, it's going to be closed off a little bit more, like the men's game. The men's game is really difficult at the moment because, people just don't want to speak to you, Even Swedish lads that I've known growing up and Norwegian lads I've known growing up, it's a pain in the backside to speak. They go, oh, yeah, it's a great team performance. Just delighted to get the 3 points. Like, I don't care, whereas we shared a little thing internally before we did this of Maria Thorisdottir and Maren answering questions about each other, and Maria fell over out of the chair, but put that out, that'll be good crack, that'll be fun, we'll put that out there for the fans. And you can't imagine that the 20 hangers on of one of the top male players in the world would ever allow that to happen, but that's where we are. So to answer your question, it was a magnificent experience. And I mean, nobody holds these players in higher regard than me. At the same time as you try to build a relationship based on trust with them, and you try to be some sort of equal. So I would never force them to do anything. I'd always give them the option to say, look, can we do an interview in English when they're playing Australia with a rugby ball? But yeah, fine. If they didn't want to do something, that's also fine. And I think that's also, and they'll tell you that as well, that what it's like, if you can have that trust with them and they can trust you, it always works out so much better. I see somebody in the comments saying that Guro should have been a Red Devil there. I think Guro's actually a Liverpool supporter. Most Norwegians are, but there you go.
That's the thing that I noticed, actually, Phil, when I went to my very, very first game, how close you can get to the players, how the players embrace the fans a lot more. You go to Old Trafford, you stop behind bars, barriers, and the players just come in. They might give you a wave if they want to. They might come over depending on what time they've got, but normally they just head off the bus, quick look up, and they're in. Players on, I know Connor's good friends with Katie Zellem's dad. He's got to know Katie Zellem's dad through going to the games. And Katie Zellem's dad's posted something about her doing Jenga or something like that on Twitter today. You never get Ronaldo doing that with his family. And yet these footballers are just people, aren't they? They're just ordinary people, just like us. Now, yes, we've got to respect for what their craft, their ability, and what they're able to achieve within the game. But ultimately, we're all the same. We all like Christmas. We all laugh. We all cry. We've all got the plethora of emotions. But Katie Zellem's dad posting that today was just brilliant. And I just thought that really epitomised football, women's football in the game, and how close to home it is, and how people can actually reach out and touch it. And they really appreciate that, And There is a fear. I don't know what Connor thinks, but there is a fear that as more professional it gets, the more I can say disconnected it might get, and we don't want that really. I'm hoping the women's game can keep that elasticity together, and we're able to, like you say, understand the enormity of the presence of an elite athlete there is, but also understand they're a human being and you can talk to them and stuff of that nature. So that just tickled me today, actually, to be fair.
Well, it is. I mean, the humanity behind him. Sorry to interrupt you, Connor, but there's a friend of mine who lives down in Australia, and his daughter's a mad sports fan, right? So it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, she's also a Liverpool supporter, so we leave that to one side. But when the Norwegians were playing against Australia, we did a little thing where she said these Australian words in English, and the girls had to guess what they were. So one of the girls had actually lived, Elise Thorisdottir had actually lived in Australia, so she got some of them. But the other girls were just confounded by some of these Tim Tams and thongs and all this kind of thing. They hadn't a clue what the girl was talking about. But in return for that, I know how mad this kid is on Instagram, and I said to one of the players, Therese Åsland is her name. She's only ever played really in Norway and Sweden. She just moved back to Sandviken there, where Vilde Boe Risa was playing before she came to United. And I said to Therese, I said, would you mind doing me a favour? Would you just follow this kid? Because it would mean so much to her if you did it. And Therese went, absolutely, no problem. And sent her a DM and that kind of thing. And I've been to when the Republic of Ireland women's team play in Tallinn, South County Dublin there, and to see them go around. The last time I was there actually was in November when they played the Swedes. And lads, it was freezing, and the players still went around and they signed the autographs and they took the selfies and that kind of thing. I left before the players did, and that never happens, because that's how decent they are,
Yeah, 100%. I hope it sticks around. Nat's in the comments at the moment. Nat will be the first to tell you what it's like, having that relationships and those kind of things. We're going to talk about Boe Risa first in this kind of first section. I think the best place to start is obviously me and Stu weren't really aware of her before she signed for United. And obviously she didn't start the season either. I think she played against Reading and then Durham, but not that many minutes until recently. What were your kind of thoughts on her before she signed for United?
Well, before she signed for United, this has been, the longest story ever, right? Her transfer from Sweden through Norway to United, or her signing for United, has been everybody kind of knew, the dogs in the street knew that eventually she was going to wind up at United. It was just a case of when. So she came off the back of a season where a year ago she just won the Damallsvenskan, the top flight in Sweden, as captain of the club with Göteborgs Kopparbergs FC, right? So this club had gone, they'd beaten everybody. They beat Linköping, they had national team players, including Frida Maanum, who now plays for Arsenal, and they beat them 7-0 to win the title with a game in hand, right? This was an absolute juggernaut in Sweden. But everybody knew that Vilde was going to go, right? That she had done all that she could there. She'd been there since 2018. And I'd always seen her as just this incredible two-way midfielder. The kind of, the player who just keeps everything going, the kind of player who, it doesn't matter where you are in the field, if you're the goalkeeper, the centre back, the right back, or the centre forward, if you're in trouble, you can always give her the ball and she'll always sort it out, right? So we knew she was going to go. The money in the Women's Super League was better than what she was getting here, and there was plenty of clubs sniffing around her as well, So the decision was kind of made that she was going to go to United. But then because of COVID-19 and because of everything else, the other thing was that the week after Kopparbergs Göteborgs FC won the title, the club was liquidated. The owners just went, well, that was great. We won the title, but no, we don't have any guarantees of income and that kind of thing. And so we're just going to give up. Thanks very much. So long, and thanks for all the fish. And it was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. So the club was liquidated, and then there's a local club called BK Häcken, which is like a very big club on the men's side, and there are quite a lot of junior players as well. And they went, fucking hang on a second, we can't allow this to happen. Is there any way that we can absorb them? And, if you're going to absorb them in there, you have to go through the Football League as well. You have to go through the Football Federation and say, okay, is it okay if we take over what they call the elite license and bring them in here? Can we still have their Champions League place? Can we still are their contracts still valid and that kind of thing if that was to happen? So they went, okay, so Vilde, like a week after she'd captained the club didn't even exist anymore on paper. So it took until around about this time of the year for that to be sorted out. She was never going back anyway, lads. The interest was just too big for her to go somewhere else. So at the time there, I was sort of saying to people around her, going, okay, when's this going to be announced? When's it going to be announced? When she go to United? They're going, calm, take it easy now. It's like something will happen soon. And they never expressly said it'll be United, but it was just taken for granted that was going to be it. And then she started training with Sandviken as well. Now, Sandviken are based in Bergen, just on the deepest fjord in Norway. And that was where the story went from there, right? It fucking disappeared down into that fjord, and nobody knew what was going on. It was like, Okay,
How,
she's
how
trained
far
away
down
there.
the league is that? How far down step-wise?
They were in the
would you
top flight.
say?
They were in the top flight. So that's
They're in the top
like
flight.
it's still a good level. But the women's game has become so much better recently, right? And the perfect example of that is the Champions League final next year, right? Chelsea steamrolled everybody in the Women's Super League last year. They were absolutely brilliant, and they were beaten 4-0 in the first half by Barcelona. They were literally run out of the park in Gothenburg at the final. And so that's where it is now. Whereas previously, Norwegian and Danish and Swedish teams would have had a chance in the Champions League. They're gone. They're just not at that level anymore. So when you send VBR there to train, absolutely, she's training. Her conditioning is going to be okay, but she's not going to have that sharpness. She's not going to have that same level of fitness. You can no longer just take a player, no more than you could take a player from the League of Ireland and just drop them in, or the Women's National League in Ireland and just drop them into the Women's Super League. It's just not possible. And then she signed for Sandvik. I was like, what's going on here? I thought, you were telling me Spain and France and Germany and all these other clubs, and she signed for Sandviken. Now, again, I don't want to be mean to Sandviken because they're one of the best clubs in Norway, and indeed, today SSC Osland has just signed there. There's some brilliant players. Vilde Maria Bogstad, one of the goalkeepers there, she's fantastic. So they have a really, really good team. But again, if you want to play at the very highest level, and that's what we're talking about at the top end of the Women's Super League now, Sandvik is not the place to be. And she starts playing games for them. Now, I wasn't alone in thinking that this is like Russian roulette, lads, because every time you go out, there's a lot of artificial pitches. There's a lot of pitches that aren't great. And you're thinking, like ACLs and MCLs and that kind of thing. Like one bad tackle and, the dream of coming to Manchester United could be all over. But luckily enough, they finally got it over. And I was trying to get one of our advisors in Readsview. I was trying to get hold of him over the weekend just to find out exactly what it was. But it seems to have been that, the uncertainty around COVID and what was happening really hit the Women's Super League clubs hard. I know a lot of people around Vilde were saying that, a lot of girls she played with were really upset because they got stuck in England last year. Among them, Maria Thorisdottir, Mara Mjelde, Magdalena Eriksson, Pernilla Harder, they all had to spend Gura Reiten, who's the biggest home bird you'll ever meet. They all had to spend Christmas in England. And, much and all as we've all enjoyed our Christmas, lads, that's not what they're looking for. They want to be at home eating the raw herring, and they can have mine, I can tell you. But so that was where it went. So eventually she did get there. And I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be exactly as you said, Stu, that, she was going to come in there. And even on the training ground, I figured she's going to struggle to begin with because her game is so much based on that sense of timing, right? She plays in spaces that only exist for a fraction of a second. You can't recreate that. You can't recreate that with Sandviken's players. With the best will in the world, you're just not going to be able to do it. And that to me is why it has taken so long for her to settle. So it hasn't surprised me one bit that she's had a little bit of trouble, or it's taken a little bit of time to settle into the English game at Manchester United.
Do you think? Go on.
I was just going to say, really, it was interesting because I speculated that there was an issue. I didn't know what that was, and I maybe put it across incorrectly, and I said maybe she's not training to the best of her ability, and I got absolutely lambasted for that. But it was only based on what, my experience, actually, when I moved to a new club, and I've taken a long time to get up to speed. I thought I was at a decent level and realized, well, hold on, I'm 3 steps below here. I've got to really knuckle down if I'm going to have any chance of gaining a shirt. And I just wondered, and it was pure wonder, wasn't it, Connor? I just wonder whether that was the case. So thanks for Connor clearing that up for me. I really appreciate it.
Well, if you look at when she played against Nigeria, and when she played against Australia, and when she played against England in that game that they got knocked out on, if you looked at her, she was one of these players. She's not the most flashy player, right? But if you know football and you know what you're looking at, you know how important she is to that team, right? And ultimately, that Norway team in 2019 were undone slightly by a lack of trust in the depth, not a lack of depth, but a lack of trust in the depth of the squad, right? So the coach, Martin Kjellgren, and I've said this to his face, that, he needs sometimes to go a little bit outside of the box, right? You can't just run on 10 or 12 or 13 players. That'll be fine for one match or for 2 qualifiers in the space of 4 days or a week. But over the tournament, you have to trust players 16, 17, 18, 19. You've got to be there and say, okay, I'm going to spring you off the bench now. But Vilde was one of the ever-presents in that. Now, if she was ever subbed off at all, she was taken off, 10, 15 minutes to go when a game was won against people. But every time something was in the mixer, lads, every time when they were playing against France or they're playing against South Korea, Nigeria, when that game was there to be won, she was in there. And there's Ingrid Syrstad Engen, who's now playing for Barcelona. She was playing for LSK, which is a Norwegian club, absolutely brilliant Norwegian club, won all around them. Then she went to Wolfsburg in Germany, and now she's at Barcelona. And she has developed so much in the national team alongside VBR. It's incredible how well Ingrid's that little bit taller, because VBR is not the biggest in the world, but she doesn't need to be. We've seen any amount of sort of diminutive midfielders who have excelled in that role. So, that's how important that she is. And you don't lose that, Stu. So the fact that she could do that in 2019, there was no way she's going to come to Manchester United in 2021, do the same thing, having not played at the highest level for a while. But there is absolutely, and I would say, I saw one of the lads there saying that, Manchester United be in the Champions League places if they had got her from the start of the season. You haven't even seen the best of her yet, right? Because she can dominate games from minute 1 to minute 90 plus once she's up there. And I reckon now she's going to go home. She's going to be enjoying her Christmas back in Norway and Betty in there somewhere. And when she comes back in January, I'd say keep an eye out from January to April, May, lads, because I really think she's going to go off.
Do you think then, just off the back of that, I've got so many questions already off the back of it. But just going off, I might come back to a few. I'm just going to go obviously what we had from the start. So do you think kind of Skinner was right then to maybe leave her out at the start? Because she's played that first game against Reading. I think she played 75 minutes. I think Jackie came on. And then she played against Durham. We got bullied but I think every player got bullied at Durham because they're a very physical side. But do you think that Skinner maybe was right then in kind of bedding her in slowly? Because we're seeing, Nat, again, she's a massive Boe Risa fan, and obviously the idea of Jackie and Boe Risa together is a very exciting prospect. But do you think, you just said there that we haven't seen the best of it yet? Do you think he was right then in kind of bedding her in slowly? Because we all think she's been, one of our best players the last 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, I think that it's always a dichotomy, really. It's always really, really hard for a coach, right? Because the only way that you will get up to speed is by playing. But if she's not playing at her highest level, then maybe there's somebody else who deserves, to be in the side ahead of her on merit, right? Talent is worth nothing without application in football, lads. You can have all the talent you want, but if you don't apply it, somebody else is going to take your place. And there isn't a system, unfortunately, in women's football at the moment where you can get like a reserve team game. I remember a lad who played for Liverpool telling me years ago that, there's 50 pros at Liverpool. So just to get in the reserves, well, you had to play some of the world's best players. We're not at that stage yet with the women's game where she can't go in. Okay, she can go in against Durham and get a good tough game of football, but you can't go into a reserve game or an under 21 game and sort of sharpen the tools in your box and then get back in there against Manchester City, against Arsenal. You're going up against serious footballers when you play the top 4 or 5 clubs in England. Yeah, exactly. So it was a difficult one. I do think that Skinner was right. I do think that they're going to benefit from it now. I do think it's very, very painful if you're a Manchester United fan to know that you have a player with that capacity to control a game sitting on the bench. I think it was also extremely painful for her, because she's one of the biggest winners you'll ever meet. Like an awful lot of these women are like, I like to think that I like to win things, but I've seen her gritting her teeth after they lost to England going, we should have won that game. We should have won that game, And when you see that in somebody and they know that that's what they want to do, but they're just not physically able to do it just yet, I'd say it was very, very difficult for her as well. So I do think that was right. But, again, you can't play against the calendar the whole time. You have to take people where they are at any specific time for any specific game. Try to put your best team out there and make the most of it. But what I really do hope now is that she stays injury free, that is now put behind her, that this sort of, here when you bring your kids to daycare for the first time, you get a week where you bring them and you stay with them, and then towards the end of the week, you leave them for an hour, and then you leave them for half the day, and then you collect them at 1 o'clock, and everything's good. So they call it in-schooling in Swedish and Norwegian. So I hope that period for her now at Manchester United is over, and that she'll be able to go in there and dominate in the way I know she can.
Well, it's interesting because I talk on the men's channel, Phil, all the time about application and intelligence, and Connor will laugh about that because it's a staple for me. Because people talk about Donny van der Beek and they talk about certain players that aren't doing this and aren't doing that. And I just say, look, you have to look at the intelligent side of football first, not just what you do with your feet. It's actually what you do with your eyes, what you do with your brain. That's what makes a really good footballer. What I've noticed about VBR over the last couple of weeks is her short, sharp passing is very, very good. Like you say, she can drift into a space, but the ball has to be delivered immediately because that space won't be there. And we're not quite there yet on her wavelength with that. And I'm wondering, well, Skinner's obviously seen and noticed that. But I don't know if he was a Skinner signing. Connor might be able to tell me whether he was what's her name? Who was the previous manager? Casey Stoney, signing. Yeah, Casey Stoney signing. But even if that is the case, then Skinner might not have known everything about her, might not have understood how to use her. There might have been a bit of a language barrier. I don't know whether she speaks fluent English.
Oh, she speaks better English than me, mate.
Oh, does she?
All Scandinavians do. It's not that hard.
But now you're starting to see what everybody calls the green shoots, aren't you?
Yeah.
But it's all about momentum now, isn't it? And I think the break's good in one aspect, but bad in another, because the women's team, we're just starting to get that momentum. And we're just starting to find the drive, the connectivity that you need in an 11. And so maybe she'll go back, like you say, she'll rest up, come back refreshed, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she can deliver.
Can I just follow up on a question just before you jump back in on that, because I can see Nat putting some midfield suggestions in. That was something that we were going to talk about, and it kind of links into everything that we were discussing there. Obviously, Jackie's been out injured recently. Obviously, highly rated footballer. A lot of people would say she is one of the best midfielders at our club. We've got obviously Ella Toon there, Zellum plays there, Hayley Ladd's obviously come back in and is our natural 6. Skinner's got a good problem, in terms of our midfield. I don't really want to put you on the spot, but I mean, what would your kind of idea? Where would you incorporate Boe Risa into that? Do you think? Nat's saying there, Ladd, Jackie, Boe Risa, and then maybe Toon out wide, or I don't quite know where Ella Toon fits into that. But where would you fit Boe Risa in with this kind of stacked midfield we've got?
It's really, really difficult because there's two things there, right? One is you've got a whole lot of good players around her, and you also have a player in VBR who's clever enough to do different things, right? So she can play 6, she can play 8, she can play 10, right? You just tell her what to do, and she'll go and do it. And that's actually a sort of a problem. You can sometimes have too much choice. It's like when a kid opens their selection box this Christmas, they can't work out what they want to eat out of it, And that's where Skinner's at the moment, because there's so many good players, and that will be a thing for the training ground, is to find where the alchemy is in this United midfield, right? Who works best? It could be that Jackie works best with VBR, right? It could be, like Ella Toon is one of those, she's one of those people who's going to have to learn to play the game on VBR's wavelength. If she wants those balls that she can put in the back of the net, and she will get them. If you just make the runs, the ball is going to come. So they're going to have to work out what the best thing for her to do is. I'm kind of a fan of giving her a little bit of freedom in the middle, right? Because again, the most important thing is not her touch, it's not her technique. It's, as Stu says, it's her intelligence, right? She will 9.5 times out of 10, she'll do or try to do the right thing with the ball. May not always come off, but she'll always try to do the right thing with the ball. And once you have a player that does that, tactics kind of go out the window, right? And again, just to get back to one of the things that Stu was saying, one of the problems with VBR and the team to begin with was that it's not that she wasn't on top form, it's that people didn't have the courage to pass her the ball, right? You can give her the ball in a phone box, lads, and she's coming out with it. That's the beginning and the end of it, right? But if I'm standing there as a centre half or as a right back and she's inside and somebody's right behind her, I don't have the courage to give her that ball because I don't have the courage to hit the pass properly to begin with. And I think, okay, am I giving her a hospital ball? She's going to get clattered. Is she going to make sure that she's the first person to it, right? You know what? Hit the pass. Let her sort it out because she's good enough to do that. And she's good enough to get away from that situation. So somewhere in that sort of tumble dryer of things I've just given you there is the truth for Manchester United. But I do think that's one of those things that I'd say they're probably working an awful lot on it in terms of, the pairings and the trios that they put together in the various sort of short-sided games that they're going to play. But I do think the VBR at the end of the day, it's, the who and the numbers and that kind of thing don't really matter as much as giving her the confidence and giving her the ball and letting her get on with it.
So the interesting thought process would be a diamond then. Give VBR a floating role. Zellum and Groningen maybe. I'm just thinking aloud. Ladd to hold. Now that would be quite interesting, but it's kind of quite rightly says Phil, where does Ella Toon fit into that? Because I don't see Russo as a 9. She's very, very good at driving with the ball. She's absolutely brilliant. Standing fourth the same, superb at driving with the ball. But there's no natural instinct in the predatory 18-yard box or the 12 yards from the spot to the goal line. There's no predatory instincts. And Martha Thomas has got that. She's able to drift into that place just at the right time. I mean, her goal the other day wasn't a difficult finish, but it was her ability to be there. I'm wondering whether or not how that would work. That to me would be a brilliant starting front 6, but I don't know.
I'm going to drop a bomb on you, lads, right? There's a player that VBR played with at BK Häcken, previously Copa Göteborg, right? Called Stina Blackstenius, a Swedish international.
I was just about to ask you about her.
There you go. Sometime in the next hour, I would expect her to be named the female player of the year in this country, right?
She's going to go nuts now. She's going to explode, isn't she?
Yeah, this is going to be on the Daily Mail website in no time, right? But if Manchester United are serious about being the top club in England, not just among the top clubs, but being the top clubs, open the wallet, go get her, right? Because the relationship between the two, the telepathy between her and VBR, knowing each other and that kind of thing, it would be the starting sort of stretch would be so much shorter for Blackstenius if you just popped her into that team. And there you go, we got Natalie in there already, you know.
Yeah.
But it would just be, I think it would just, if you want to see the best of United after Christmas, throw her in there, and you would learn so much from a player like that. She is exactly what you said is missing, Stu. From from the edge of the penalty area to the goal line, she's just a magnificent finisher. She's just one touch. She's driven. You know, I was at they lost to Bayern Munich there in the Champions League. There, I was down in Gothenburg, and again it was fucking freezing. But again, that thing of it doesn't matter that she's up against some of the best defenders in the world. Every single ball, she's on top of it, you know. And I'd love to see her there. Her contract is just going out now. It will run out on New Year's Eve, and I don't think she's going to come back to Sweden. And Manchester United, for me, if you're serious about being one of the biggest clubs and the biggest club in the women's game, they've got, even if they don't get her, they've got to be there or thereabouts. They've got to have a bid in. They've got to be prepared to pay her. But if you put those two together, I usually say that, you know, my time is now limited because I cover women's and men's football and a bunch of other sports besides, right? Yeah. So I only really get to see, you know, at the moment it's Arsenal are at the top of the table, it's Chelsea who are in second, and whoever they're playing, right? So my good mate Louise Quinn of Birmingham, they've just they're occupying the bottom berth of the season. Much and all, I love that girl. She used to play over here. She's actually been in this house for dinner once or twice. I don't get to see her play, and it's the same thing with VBR Manchester United. If they want me to be sitting here watching them every Saturday, every Sunday when they're playing, get Stina in there, and I swear to God there'll be fireworks from New Year's Eve onwards.
Do you think just to add excitement, because I know we've spoken about, well, not necessarily me, but this channel has spoken about Stina for weeks. You know, it's been the one name. If you can ask any United fan who they want in January, it's Stina. That's the first name I know. Is there, you know, I don't want to turn this into kind of her show, but just, someone asked the question earlier whether you've heard anything. Obviously, you're kind of in that group of, you know, the kind of Scandinavian clubs. Is there anything that you know extra that's not necessarily reported about her or anything?
There's an awful lot of talk, and the only thing that's being said at the moment is that behind the scenes, again, the BK Häcken, the club that she was with, they fired their manager sort of, it was in September, October. They got rid of him pretty late. They got in a new guy. The new guy is very good, and the question has been, is he good enough to keep her there? And I think, lads, the fact of the matter is that he's not, okay? Because the women's game is so much bigger now. A few years ago, if you were playing for an Umeå way up north here, you know, and the girls were on, you know, 200, 500, maybe 600 quid a week if they were lucky, you know, then it was much of a muchness if you played for Chelsea or Arsenal or Umeå, and, you know, half the clubs you hadn't even heard of. But now it's different, and you have the exposure of playing on Sky Sports every week, of being on the FA Player, of being on Viasat here in Scandinavia. The games are shown over here as well, and that's a different level, you know. So I do think that this carrot is going to be too big for her. I'm actually surprised. I would be hugely surprised if she was to stay here. I would also, her way of playing, for anybody that's seen her, she is so suited to the English game that it's just unbelievable. Yes, go to Spain and do the way Fridolina Rolfö's been doing at Barcelona, great player. Go to Wolfsburg, go to wherever you want, to Germany, go to Lyon. Just go to England, right? This is what you were born to do, kid. Go over there, score your 20 goals in a season, take on Vivian Miedema for that title, you know, show them there's a new kid in town. I just think now, whether it's going to be United or not, I don't know, but I do feel that she's going to go somewhere. And at the moment, there are so many Swedes going to England, right? And this is a small sort of duck pond that we're operating in here. So you had a few of them went to Everton there, Anna Anvegård and a couple of others, right? And that's where the eyes are turning now. Swedish people, Norwegian people, they love English football. It's what gets us through the cold, dark, miserable winters here, is watching English football. And now the women's game is catching up in the men's game. So if you can see a player like Stina playing for Manchester United, or if you can see them playing for Arsenal or for Liverpool, you know, get them in there.
Yeah, no, that sounds brilliant. Are they good friends off the pitch, Stina and VBR, or?
I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can tell you is that club, they've been very, very tight-knit until very recently. So I do think that, you know, and against you, I wouldn't be that worried, because the way when I saw them play together for Copa Bay, like they were just, like, again, the telepathy. There's another girl, Olivia Skog. I don't know why Olivia isn't playing there. She's in Rosengård here now. Brilliant player. Great singer as well. But if she had gone over there somewhere like that, so they're just, good footballers have a way of finding each other and making each other better and making the sum of their parts so much more than what it is. It's the way that she does with England in the national team as well. But her and Stina had that team, because, you know, you love these little, I know as a centre half, you really don't love them, Stu. But those passes are slid in between the full back and the centre back at just the time and the place where you don't want them. That's what VBR could do for Stina in Manchester United or in the Women's Super League.
I'd have to do that. Oh, sorry, ref, I tripped. Kind of thing.
Nowhere near a ref.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Can we, if you don't mind, I'd like to move on to something a bit more serious now. Because as Connor knows, and most people who watch the at the Women's Channel know that I'm a massive Thor fan. She's my type of centre half. But when we were having a conversation last week, you mentioned that she'd had a couple of issues with concussion, and I just wondered if you could give the fans a bit of an issue, a bit of a kind of idea as to what was happening with her and why that came about, and would that be, well, we know that would affect form, but did that affect her tail off the last season, that type of thing? So.
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, she's one of the most unfortunate players you'll ever come across. So, if you go back to her, when she started playing football, she comes from a very sporting family. Her dad is from Iceland. They're from a little town called Selfoss, which is just outside of Reykjavik. So about 40 kilometers down the road there. And they're like fantastic people, but her father's big into Olympic handball. So he coaches the national team for Norway, So she was always into both soccer and handball. And she actually had played for Klepp, I think, in Norway. And she played a good few games for them before she went, I'm getting too many injuries and things were going wrong and that kind of thing. So she ended up going to play handball, and then she came back to the football again. She suffered a foot injury, which looked like it might ruin her career. And at the same time, even with all these sort of small niggling injuries, Chelsea still came in, they put in a bit, and they brought her over. They gave her a contract there. But as far as I know, she only played something like 22 or 24 games in all her time at Chelsea. Now, amazingly, she seemed to turn into a sort of a key player. She was one of these people who really set the tone in those games that she played. She played alongside Mara Mjelde. She played alongside Magdalena Eriksson. But I think Maria at 5'7" is probably the tallest of all of them. So I tend to look at her as like this Amazon figure, but she's only 5'7". But she plays like she's 6'3".
She does, yeah.
She's just amazing. Now, that's no offense to Moran. Moran is tiny, but she's absolutely a fantastic footballer as well. A great header of the ball. And if you saw her going up against Wendy Renard when they're playing against France, Norway playing against France, it was incredible to see Moran. She can't be an inch over 5 foot, lads. She's just incredible. But Maria is just an incredible footballer, and those two complement each other so well. And did so at Chelsea. I felt really sorry for her because she suffered that concussion at Chelsea and it took her months to get over it. Like, I literally think she was 6 months on the bench, and she felt like, again, I think that was coming into the World Cup as well. So she felt really, really bad, the whole time. The injury really didn't help her. She thought she may never play football again. And I think she really loved, and this is no offense to United fans, I think she really loved being a Chelsea player because Emma Hayes has created this wonderful thing down in Chelsea. They have that Scandinavian community. Gura Reiten, who's a bit like a little sister to them all, had come to the club. Jon Andersson, the Swedish left back, they all got on really, really well. They had a really good time there. And then Maria was told, no, you have to go. And they sent her up to Manchester United. And to be honest, I was delighted for her, right? Because United at the time had made great strides in the women's team. And this, to me, was United getting a leader, right? It was getting somebody that you can look at. When you're looking around the corner, when you're looking around a free kick, you're looking to the one person, you're going, okay, she's got that whole area there, right? I joked once on Twitter, that I think, 23% of the world's surface is covered by land, and 83% is covered by water. The rest is covered by Maria Thorisdottir. She's just that good at reading the game. She's just going to get there, head the ball away, get something on it. Now, she's made the odd mistake, and the unfortunate thing is a centre back, as you well know, Stu, you get seen for that. But she really is incredibly good at the nuts and bolts thing. And again, them buying her or them signing her and then getting VBR in, again, there's just this thing of, what am I going to do? I'm going to get it and give it to Vilde. And if Vilde doesn't want it, she's going to give it back to me, and I'm going to look for a fullback. But the instinct is there from day one to be able to do these things. And anything you can do on a football pitch that is automatic and correct is always the right thing to do.
Oh, absolutely.
So now, by having that in Manchester United, I really do think that by putting these pieces together, and if you, again, to set the hype train rolling again, if you have Thorisdottir here and then VBR here and then Blackstenius there, and we can get this telepathy going, lads, give me the season ticket, I'll be right over in the morning. And not only that, lads, but she is a magnificent person. That video that I mentioned earlier on there, we did a video for FIFA where herself and Maudem were asking questions about each other. It's kind of, how much do you know about your teammate thing? And Maudem was asked, what quality does the other girl have that you really wouldn't want, And Maureen's answer was, she's ditzy, right? Vince who was it, Norwegian. And as she read that out, Maria turned around to look at it, and she fell off the chair. And she just burst out laughing. And, we said to her, okay, we don't have to put it out, and she was going, no, it's fine, put it out, having a laugh at her own expense. So she really is, she's so down to earth. Again, like a real winner, but she's able to take a step back and, to be somebody, she can let these things go. Incredibly hard worker, right? I mean, Maureen always jokes that if there was one thing she could have from Maria, it would be her six-pack. Like, she just has incredible stomach muscles, apparently. I don't know, I've never asked her to show them to me or anything else like that. But just incredible, incredibly hard worker in the gym, incredible stamina and that kind of thing, So even when you see her play extra time games and that kind of thing, it's like she barely breaks a sweat, So, and she's a wonderful person to have around the dressing room. She's just a really caring, warm person, as well as being an absolutely brilliant footballer.
Do you think? Do you think then just off it's interesting you mentioned there about a leader, because I think if you asked most United fans to name the leaders in the squad, I don't think Maria would actually come up on a lot of people's list. I think, you're looking at obviously Zellam's the official captain, and then Mannion. I think a lot of people would say Mary Earps as well. Yep. Ella Toon as well has stepped up, this season as well, in terms of kind of being vocal on the pitch. So it's interesting you say that, and it kind of onto my second point is, do you think she can kind of, now Millie Turner's back, it's looking likely that Mannion and Turner are going to be the centre-back partnership. Is there a chance, do you think, that Maria can push her way back into that starting 11? Because you speak very highly of it by the sounds of it.
I absolutely do, lads. And I do think that, there's a possibility that she could move out to right back. There's a possibility that she could move into the defensive midfield role. There's because let's not forget, she started her career as a striker, right? I think up to about under 15 for Norway, she had a hat load of goals, right? And then all of a sudden, no, can you play centre-back for a little while? And then she just never got out of the back line again, So she actually has skills that, and again, alongside VBR, for instance, now we've already talked about how crowded the midfield is there, right? But there are opportunities for her to force her way into the side. And the thing with leadership is that leadership to me is not Tony Adams, John Terry stand there screaming with your arm in the air thing. Leadership is other people turning around and trusting you. Right. And knowing that you are not going to back down. You're not going to leave them in a hole. You're not going to blame them. You're not going to single them out. They're going to take everything together with you. And that's what Maria gives you. Maria gives you a sense of taking responsibility for what's going on the pitch. And if you can't deal with it, she'll help you. And that to me is the kind of leadership that when you're trying to break into this top 3 or 4 clubs there between your Arsenals, your Manchester Cities, and now, it's a great opportunity with Manchester City playing the way they are, and Chelsea. Maria can give you the kind of push, that kind of push leadership that can take you in there and keep you in there.
Yeah, it's a fair. I didn't know whether Stu was going to jump back in, because I know, Stu, obviously you're a big fan of it. Same as myself, actually. I kind of said that when I saw her at the start of the season, I said she's a proper old-fashioned centre back. Not afraid to get stuck in. She's very kind of authoritative at the back. That's what I felt like, going up for the headers and making sure, especially in games where it is against a more physical side. Obviously, Chelsea the exception, because that game was just the whole team the whole team fell apart. But yeah, Stu, I don't know whether you've got anything to add on Thor and what you've seen so far.
I was going to jump in, actually, because everything that you said to her about a meat and potatoes type of centre half is exactly what I was, and that's what I noticed at Reading. That's exactly what my thoughts were, and that's what I come away from. And you're absolutely right. There are players that they've got the nous and the ability, the intelligence, but the drive and determination. If they can't get into their favourite position, well, where else can I make it? Where else can I fit into an 11? Because that's the type of player you need. And if you think, because somebody asked me a question, actually, Lanzel said, could she play DM? And I wasn't sure, really. So I said, probably not, but I'm not seeing it. But I could see her as a right back for definite, because she's got that positional sense. She'll know exactly what to do and where to usher the right back. She'll know exactly when to drop off and when to be, go tight, because that's what a centre half does. You need to be able to know when to drop off and when to go tight. The centre forward you're playing against, are they ones that back in? If they do back in, you turn your body slightly and just use your elbow, to keep them away from you, so that you can stop them turning. She's got that ability to do it. But I notice all these things, because that's what I would. That's how I would be doing.
But interestingly, Stu, the other thing is that in the Women's Super League, you can do different things tactically for every game, right? You don't need a defensive midfielder of her caliber or a centre back of her caliber when you play against Leicester and Birmingham City. And again, no offense to them, but they're just not teams that are going to attack you in that way, right? But if you play against a Miedema who is going to wander around between your midfield and your centre backs and torment the living daylights out of everybody, put Maria in there, because her ability to recognise what's going to happen before it actually happens, and to close space if needs be, or to drop off if needs be, and to fill a gap behind her, that's absolutely worth its weight in gold. So Sam Kerr does the same kind of thing. I mean, fucking Chelsea have so many players who can do the same kind of thing. Harder's a great one for dropping off there. So if you put a player like that in there, so it's almost like having somebody on special teams in American football. You go, right, we'll take her off, we'll dust her down for this particular game. She goes in, she absolutely cancels out, the best player or the playmaker in the other team. I think that she would be, handmade for that kind of player marking role. And I think she, it's one of those things that I think they may have tried it in the Norwegian team once or twice. But when you're really playing against the top teams, if you throw her in there, it's like, almost like a sweeper or a centre back who's, got room to roam there and do it. Because, as I say, I don't think anybody at Manchester United is sleeping on her. I do think that, Skinner has the worst job in the world at the moment, because he's actually got so many really good players to choose from in key positions, maybe apart from centre forward. But between the centre backs, the defenders, the central midfielders, it's quite a difficult one. But I would advise, taking another look at her and reappraising her as something other than just a centre back. Look at her as a left back, right back. Look at her as a defensive midfielder as well. See if there's some way that she can be permed into this squad, because I do think that she has qualities that can make that United side even better.
It's interesting you say that. Obviously, Nat's mentioning playing right back for Chelsea, and in the last few games, actually, Maria, when the subs have been made, Maria has gone out to right back. I think against Everton, she did it in the cup. Against Villa last weekend, she came when the subs were made. She came on and filled in at right back as well. Because when that sub was made, we were a bit like, well, who's the fullbacks now? And obviously, it looks like Maria goes out there. So I think I agree with what both's been said. You know, if she's not going to get in at centre half, to be fair, Mannion and Millie Turner have done nothing wrong. So you're not going to drop players that are not necessarily playing or making errors. You've got to find another position. Now, Ladd is at the moment is the only DM we've got. Katie's not a 6. Boe Risa's not a 6. Jackie's not a 6. So maybe there's an opportunity there. Maybe Maria can slot into DM. And, you know, if that is going to be a position that potentially, then brilliant, because I think, you know, we've all said it on this show and in previous, obviously, me and Stu speak about it. She's a very good player. I think we saw that since the since day one. So just bring up this comment from Lanzo. Solid physical matchups. Yeah, exactly that. I think that Durham game was prime example. She was the only one, I think, that could deal with the physicality. A lot of our players got bullied, and obviously Maria was the only one that could kind of deal with it. So yeah, just kind of obviously, Stu, I'll come back to you in a second, but my last question kind of on Thor, obviously, is there anything that you think she's doing maybe differently to last season? Because there was a lot of critics of her last year. She made a couple of errors that led to key goals, obviously, that dropped United out of the top 3. And the fan base was very surprised to see her in the squad, you know, at the first game against Reading, and obviously moving forward, Millie got injured. But do you think she's doing like better than last season, or do you just think it's taking this while to adapt? Is there anything in particular that you can see that she's changed?
I do think that there's an awful lot to do with the mental aspect of it, right? So you're coming from a situation, and this is very, very difficult for any player, especially as an international player, because there would have been questions over, you know, is she going to get into the squad? Is she going to start the games for Norway? As long as she has 2 legs and capable of standing, she's always going to start for Norway. That's just, they love her that much in the team. But it was always this, you know, does she have enough playing time? And the kind of mistakes that she made were these tiny, tiny misjudgments that cost you at the highest level, you know? And and it ended up costing Manchester United as well. There's no way around it. You know, much and all, I love her, and I think she's a fantastic footballer. You have to put your hand up and say that she made mistakes that cost the club. But at the same time, she's now fit in. I think she's mentally in a much better place. She's had a much better pre-season. The pandemic, you know, we'd hoped it was over, but, you know, there's been that little bit more freedom, because, you know, it's very difficult for these girls. And I mean, I felt so sorry for the women's players last year's lads when the winter break came around and they had to stay in Manchester, they had to stay in London. These aren't girls who are earning 100, 200,000 pounds a week, right? They're over there maybe earning 30, 50, 70,000 pounds a year. And it's you know, to have that sort of taken over, you're really looking forward to going home. She's a real family person, as is Gudo, as are all the girls, you know. And to be told, no, you got to stay here. Oh, by the way, you're not allowed to go out and see anybody. You're not allowed to go out and have any fun. You know, we'll deliver a bit of turkey and off you go. You know, it was a really hard time for all of them. So I would cut her a little bit of slack on that front. I think going to Manchester, fitting in there, I think she really had to sort of recalibrate where she was in her life and in her career. And if you look at, I think it was Stina Hovland who was playing for West Ham, she just went home. Okay, when her contract with West Ham went out, she went, I had enough of that. I'm not going for another lockdown if that happens. I'm out of here. I'm signing for a club in Norway. That's it. Today, Ceci Osland did the same thing. She's left Sweden and gone back there. There was one of the girls who was in Italy, I think, as well, if I remember rightly, she was playing for Milan or something, one of the fullbacks, and she went home as well. You know, so certain players just went, okay, I've had enough of this. The money, like the juice ain't worth the squeeze. The money I'm getting is not enough to keep me here. And Maria could have been in that position as well. You know, you think, okay, I've done everything I can with Chelsea. I've been up there at the highest level, playing with the best players. I'm now just under that with Manchester United. Do I really have the energy to go doing this? And she came back and she had a good pre-season. And, you know, it wasn't an accident that she was in the squad for the first game of the season against Reading. She was in there on merit, and she's back in the national team. And back at that time in sort of August, September there, I was watching her more in the national team than what I was at United at that time, and she really did look like she was back to her best. So I do think that there was a period of adjustment, both personally and to the new surroundings, that now she's getting back to where she can really show what she can do there.
No, that's great, and like I said, hopefully long may it continue. I'm just going to move it on briefly because I'm just conscious of time. A question I was going to ask a bit earlier on, we were talking kind of about the Norwegian squad. Is there anyone kind of in that squad, obviously, that you can see maybe United? Is there anyone that United should be looking at? Is there anyone that's not necessarily spoken about enough that you feel will make it very soon, or, you know, kind of hit the heights?
I think there's actually far too many to mention, right? So if you look at Swedish and Norwegian football, this is actually a great sort of, the WSL, this is a great graduate school for them, right? So these two leagues here, you have some wonderful players coming through LSK, you have some wonderful players at Rosengård here in Sweden, at BK Häcken, at Linköping, where Frida Mannen went to Arsenal, and we see that they're good enough. Now, it takes a little bit of time to adapt, but not as much maybe as if you take in a player from Africa or from South America or from Spain, where there's a language barrier, right? They all speak English. They all have fantastic teeth. They're all really friendly and they've loads of followers on Instagram, right? So it's actually perfect, the perfect package, and they've really, really good football skills. The ones who've made it to the national teams here, that's just, that's gilt-edged stuff, lads. If you're making it into a national team squad in Sweden and Norway, you are good enough to play in the Women's Super League. That's just how it is. Whether they can convince them to come over now, I mean, Blackstenius to me in Sweden would be the one to be looking at. There's some girls in Norway who've come up, like since the 2019 World Cup, obviously there's been a bit of a shift. There's maybe 6-7 players who don't play anymore, and that there's some of the new younger ones who are coming up. They've established themselves. They could probably do it another season or two yet. Tuva Hansen's a great player. There's so many good players. I just need to see a little bit more of them before I could say to United fans or to Arsenal fans, look, watch out for this one, because she's definitely, the message. But the ones that we have seen, again, I think Blackstenius would definitely tear it up at Manchester United. But I think it's a good idea in general. And if we go back, right, and I always hate comparing women's football and men's football, but if you go back to when the Premier League actually started, you had Roland Nielsen and you had Scandinavian players did really, really well when the Premier League was starting. And it's actually no different for the Women's Super League, because the girls have all the qualities you need to succeed there. And even more so, the women's teams here, the national teams here, particularly in Norway and Sweden, have always been at the top of their game, right? Norway are one of the only women's teams to have won the World Cup. Right, the Swedes made it to the Olympic final and somehow contrived to lose against Canada. I was at that game and I still don't know how they managed to blow it on penalties. So you're talking about really, really top level players who are going to fit in, and it doesn't really matter to me who Manchester United signs. I really think that if they do sign any international from those two squads, they're getting a quality player who are going to make the club better.
That's great. Can you just name drop Blackstenius one more time for us?
Stina Blackstenius. Stina, if you're watching this, girl, I have to tag in this when it goes out there, right? I'll never tell you what to do, right? But consider it. I think you would do very, very well there, right? I'll send this on to you in the DM later on.
I can tell you now, the United women's fan base would erupt if
as they should. And you know what, lads? It's such a privilege to be able to see these women play. I've had it, for 15, 20 years living in this country, but now to be able to see the best players in the world, and they're playing down the road at Manchester United, Manchester City, and Arsenal, to be able to see them on Sky Sports, we really are. I mentioned earlier on, this to me is the golden age of women's football. Back before the 2019 World Cup, I talked to Pia Sundhage, who coached the American team. She coached the Swedish women's team. I just called her up and said, Pia, is this the breakthrough? And she went, mate, if I had $1 for every time I'd heard that this is the breakthrough for women's football. But you know what? It turned out that that's what it was, and really to have that, take that chance now. So if you're the kind of United fan who has a season ticket for the men's team, never goes there, go down and see the women. I guarantee you'll be converted. You'll be saved, like the three of us talking to you here this evening. You'll have the time of your life and they'll be with you forever.
Yeah, 100%. Me and Stu can massively vouch for that. I just want to ask you one more quick question before we wrap up. You can answer this as quickly as you want. Manchester United, obviously, at the moment, we're sat in fourth. I believe fourth or fifth. Top three is obviously the target. Where do you feel, if you've watched United this season, where do you feel we can get at the end of this season? Do you think we can win a trophy, maybe the Conti or FA, and is top three kind of obtainable?
I think a trophy is going to be out of the question, because Chelsea are now sort of getting their tails up again. You can't give Emma Hayes time, and she's going to have that over the Christmas break, right? But I absolutely think that if Manchester United don't take third spot in the league, they can consider the season a failure, okay? Because Manchester City are just banana skin after banana skin. And, for Manchester United to be sitting there going, this is the greatest opportunity we've ever had to put one over on City in the women's game, I really think that they need to do that. And by doing that, then, Stina Blackstenius will look at that. If she doesn't sign in January, she'll look at that in the summer and go, you know what? I might sign for them for September.
Agent Phil, but Agent Phil is a drop line. Stina, Agent Phil.
Expecting the club to start sending me checks there if she does.
Stina, come on, brilliant.
Brilliant. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Phil, where can people find you on Twitter?
Yeah.
You can find me on @PhilipO'Connor on Twitter, and as I say, you get an awful lot of Swedish sport and women's football and that kind of thing as well, and politics and COVID and everything else that comes out of this wonderful country.
And Stu, obviously, you're.
Get me at Stu Woolley, yeah,
definitely. Phil, it's been absolutely. I've absolutely loved this show. You've really hyped me up on this Stina Blackstenius trip. Obviously, Nat, we speak to her a lot. Really hyping it up. But this show has has really hyped up as well. And it's great to hear some more insight on Boe Risa and Thor as well, because it's two of our minor stews, obviously, really backing Thor, and there's a lot of Boe Risa fans out there as well, like there should be. So we'll definitely get you back on to speak more women's football. And if Stina signs, you're going to be one of the first people back on.
If Stina signs, I'll be in the studio with you next time.
Yeah, come over.
Definitely. So I hope everyone has I think this has been the first live show since Christmas. So I hope everyone's had a good break and everyone has a safe and good new year. There's plenty of shows this week. We've got shows all through the week, like All United WFC does as well. But yeah, from the three of us, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.